Welcome back, everybody. This is the Forging Roots podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Couture, and this is episode 5. I'd like to say welcome back if you are tuning in again, and if this is your first time, welcome. This weekend, though, before we get started, I went out to my buddy's cabin for his bachelor party weekend and got to actually go out and do some river rafting, shoot guns, and actually go out and do the things that we've been talking about in the last couple of podcasts of going out, enjoying your freedoms, and doing it with friends is always a better option. And being outdoors is something I like to do. It's something I feel more connected with people, and it's a good way for me to relax. And it's actually good for this week's guest because he is a huge outdoors guy. But before we get into the guest and the interview, I'd like to start off by saying I'm sure everyone has seen by now in the news what's been going on in Afghanistan. And it is tragic what's happening over there right now. I'm sure you guys have seen all the videos and pictures of people, on the planes. And I'm not here to talk about whether pulling out of Afghanistan is the right move or should we have stayed. That's not the point of this. I'm not educated enough, nor do I have the credentials to give my opinion on that. So to me, it's more so just my heart's broken for the people that are still there and that are being overrun by the Taliban. It's probably not easy at all right now for them, and my heart goes out to them. I've been praying for them, and it just kind of has me thinking that here in the last year in the United States, we have had so much fear of the unknown, right? With COVID and government and switching of presidents, and there's fear on both sides. There's fear from every angle. And at the end of the day, it still doesn't seem nearly as bad as what's going on in Afghanistan right now. People are so fearful that they are more willing to jump onto a wing of a plane and hold on, hoping that they would make it across to get out of there. And if they don't get out, then they will be hunted down basically by the Taliban and most likely killed. That is a very different lifestyle that I don't think any of us are used to living. There may be some, but I know I've never had that kind of fear in my life of, I don't know, I'll make it to the next day. And to get onto a plane knowing that, on the wing of a plane, not into one, on the wing, holding on, not to mention you could lose oxygen if you can't even hold on up that high. And it's sad what's going on. It's definitely in everyone's thoughts and prayers, I'm sure, as it has been everywhere, news cycles and the talk of the town. But leading into this week's guest, this is somebody who has actually had some experience overseas, and his name is John Barklow. John Barklow has served over 20 years in the Navy as a Navy diver. He's operated in cold weather training facilities in Alaska for the Naval Special Warfare. And he has also been a big hunter growing up. Something he's done since he was a kid, and now is the big game product management. Let me get this right. He is the big game product manager for Sitka. It's a mouthful of a title, but he's helped design some clothing for them at Sitka and helped tweak what he has learned in the Navy and brought that to the hunting world. So I'm very excited for you guys to listen to what we talked about in this podcast. There's a lot of great knowledge and just so much on the Navy side, and then also in the hunting world and just everyday life of how we need to better equip ourselves, and especially the generation of Gen Z and millennials. We talked a little bit briefly before and after the podcast, and this is something I'm really trying to do here on this podcast, is share people like John who have this experience and get us to open our eyes up to other things in the world and not just the YouTube stars or the TikTok stars. And well, that's all fine and dandy. There are actual real people that have done real world experiences. So without further ado, enjoy episode 5 with John Barklow. So thank you, John, for coming on the Forging Roots podcast. I am honored to have you on, and the fact that you just are coming to share with me and my audience, I appreciate that very much. And I know who you are, but would you mind just giving a brief overview who you are to those who might not know and kind of what you've done?
Yeah, so John Barklow, and like we were talking before we got on the air, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio originally. Grew up there just east of the city in the suburbs, and enlisted in the Navy when I was 19. Got to do some really cool things, diving and with Naval Special Warfare over the course of 26 years. And retired in 2014, I guess, which is amazing to say. And now I am what's called the big game product manager at Sitka Gear, which is a hunting clothing company out here in Bozeman, Montana. So that's kind of like the 30-second download. Yeah.
So what is it like from Ohio to Montana? Because it's got to be very drastic, I'm sure.
Yeah, it like I said, I left at a young age and spent the first couple years of my Navy career not all over the world, not in Europe, but I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and Asia. I lived in the Philippines, and I've lived in Alaska. I've lived on both coasts of the U.S. It is so as a young boy growing up in Ohio, Montana was everything I could have dreamed about. And that's certainly not to diminish Ohio, but they call this big sky country for a reason. You can look for miles and miles and miles, and from my home alone, I can see 5 different mountain ranges. And and
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that makes me feel good. So it's an amazing place, and although a lot of people are still currently moving to Montana, generally speaking, especially compared to the East Coast, it's very unpopulated.
Yeah, definitely. I know, I'm being from Michigan, Detroit area, very close to Ohio. I'm still that boy that dreams of going out west, seeing what the world has to offer. I've gone and seen LA area. I've done mission work when I was in high school, or no, college age then, and New York's the bigger cities, but I have always just been drawn to the woods. There's something about being out in nature that just can't quite like put into words, really. There's just a peace and calmness about it. And even the mountain ranges, and my one of my uncles has been out there and does a ton of hiking, so I get to see the pictures and eventually want to work towards going out that way, having some of those experiences. And you growing up in Ohio, and did you do a lot of hunting then? Was your family into hunting, or?
Yeah, no, my family they were not. I mean, my dad had done a little bird hunting kind of prior to me. I was young, so prior to me kind of remembering. But I was always drawn to hunting for some reason, specifically archery hunting. I think it was a sense of adventure. I think it was the time of year that the season was. It allowed me to run around in the woods when the fall colors were changing and the temperatures were dropping, and I try to keep that in the forefront of my mind even today. Try to continue to channel that that inner teenage boy sometimes when I'm out there running around. But yeah, I'm self-taught. Like I said in the past, made every mistake in the book, and probably will continue to do so. But those are memories that basically laid a foundation for kind of everything I did after that.
Yeah, I'm once again very similar. My family, there was a few uncles and stuff that hunted, but other than that, I'm the first one. I just took my hunter safety class this year. So this will be my first
Oh,
season
right on.
hunting ever. So
Congrats. Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, I got into the listening to Free Range American and talking about just shooting a bow to start. So I got that last August. So it's been a year, and just practice shooting target in the back. And then same thing. There's always been something I've just kind of felt drawn to with hunting, and specifically archery hunting too. And I hopefully will go out there and get a deer this year is my goal. We'll see. I've got an uncle that is willing to show me some of the ropes, so
Excellent.
not
Yeah.
completely self-taught, but still kind of in the same boat there. But for somebody who was self-taught, how did you even know where to go hunt, where to get your bow, and like for somebody who's in the same boat as you and I in that fact and trying to get out there, what would you recommend somebody doing if they didn't have a family member to say, hey, this is what you need to do or where you need to go?
Yeah. It's actually maybe the biggest hurdle to get into
Mm-hmm.
something like hunting, is trying to figure out, where to go and what equipment and how do I do this. And, it was certainly a little more difficult in the early to mid 80s when I was trying to figure it out, and there was no such thing as internet. Nowadays there are so many great assets on the web where you can, uh, get in there, log on. There's one that comes to mind that, I know the gentleman. It's called Bow Site. You can log on to Bow Site. You can go to Ohio or you can go to Michigan, and you can
Mm-hmm.
start communicating with different people. And you'll find that for the most part, I mean, I'd say that, although hunters aren't going to give up their exact honey hole, they'll
Right.
definitely tell you, where to go or when to go or general directions to go. And what I try to tell people is it was easier as a child to enjoy the journey. And although we didn't frame it in, or I didn't frame it in words like that, I think it's important that people understand that even as an adult, you should try to enjoy this journey. And the
Mm-hmm.
journey is, learning, self-discovery, learning about nature if you haven't been out there. You said you'd like to harvest a deer this year, which absolutely should be the goal. The other goal after that should be to, feed your family or friends with it.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got to enjoy the process. You've got to enjoy, buying the gear and doing the research and learning how to shoot, and the struggle to get to where you want to go, or to harvest that first animal. Like, that is all part of the process. And it was easier when I was younger, for sure, as if I would have started as an adult. But I think we all have to kind of keep sight of that, because that is the fun part. Like, that is the nostalgia we will look back on and go, man, those were some great times. Remember when we went to so and so, and like there
Mm-hmm.
wasn't a deer within 100 miles of that place, and then the next year we kind of figured it out, and it just all fell in our lap. So the internet has definitely made it a lot easier, to try to figure out at least where to start. And so you can start several rungs farther up on the ladder than
Mm-hmm.
somebody back in the 80s did.
Yeah, I know getting into it, I was just like, went into a local archery shop here in Michigan. And when I went in, I was just like, I have absolutely no idea what I need, and just a little rabbit hole of just the bow and figuring out, okay, you got to get the bow, but then you also need to get the sight. If you want to stabilize, or do you want to use release, what type of release are you going to use, and just all these little things that were like little hurdles. But having the internet, having John Dudley on Knock On, kind of help get through these steps has been definitely helpful. But camo design, this is one thing that I'm still trying to figure out. And obviously in your position, where, like, how would you tell somebody, because camo differs, I know, depending on where you're going to be hunting, the terrain and all that. Is there a specific camo or print that's just like a good starter? Somebody wanted, just, you need something to go out and hunt.
Yeah. So I will answer that question. I will start out a little broader and then narrow it down. But um, nowadays, uh, because we have access to so much information,
Mm-hmm.
and especially if you're starting out as an adult, um, we feel the need, I think, that we have to have the best of everything, or we're not capable of going and having this amazing experience outside.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I work for, clearly, in my opinion, the best hunting apparel company in the world, I'm also going to be the first to tell you that you can be successful and have an enjoyable time beginning your hunting career without purchasing every single thing that
Mm-hmm.
is the best. So it doesn't have to be the best bow or the best arrow. It just has to be the best shooting arrow bow setup you've got, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
clothing, depending on what you want to do. Obviously, nobody wants to be wet and cold, so I think that's should definitely be a focus. Specifically to where you're hunting, or where you and I kind of grew up in that
Mm-hmm.
Midwest. I'm assuming you're kind of talking whitetail hunting.
Yep.
Again, I do think there's better patterns than others, and the farther you get into this, you're trying to stack every single thing in your favor to kind of generate that success. But it
Mm-hmm.
shouldn't be something that stops you from at least going out and achieving that. So I'm kind of a little long-winded here, but I think some of the digital patterns, certainly some of the digital patterns Sitka has, the elevated 2 pattern for a tree stand. And we are the only company that's brought a science-based approach.
Mm-hmm.
So not how does a human see you in the tree, or how does a human see me on the ground, but how does the animal I'm hunting actually see me through,
Right.
at least to the best of our knowledge, we call it deer vision or ungulate vision. What does the animal see? And that's a different approach. And so, that's why I think that the Sitka patterns, are, um, uh, perform at a higher degree than some of the other digital patterns, or even some of what we call stick and leaf. But I am very very involved in that, and was
Mm-hmm.
even able to bring out the subalpine pattern. But with that said, prior to me working for Sitka, I was certainly able to kill a fair share of animals wearing solid colors, and just trying to keep some of the hunting discipline and some of the strict kind of rules, wind in your face, only move when they're not looking at you, kind of thing, and achieve that with some solid colors. What the camo does is it begins to increase the odds in your favor,
Mm-hmm.
of success.
Absolutely. Yeah, and kind of going back, you said in there with the camo design, where did you like learn what designs were better than others, and have that kind of, where did you gain the knowledge to have that kind of input and get into a company like Sitka?
Yeah, so kind of towards the tail end of my military career, I worked on a program for all of special operations, and it was basically the military was has to put cool names on everything, so it was
Mm-hmm.
personal signature management, which was basically kind of the new camo, trying to come up with the new camo and bring in the best science and applying a different technology. So it was easier in that regard, because I'm a human. I could look through my own eyes and see what another human looked like in that pattern under different
Mm-hmm.
conditions, light conditions, optics, etc. But I learned a lot about micro and macro, and how these things are kind of done, and some of the science applied, and some of the filters that people use via computers. And Sitka had already been doing that, but I had this idea in my head that, if I were ever able to work for them, that I'd kind of seen this need, this kind of white space in this, what we call the big game hunting line, for this new pattern, which,
Mm-hmm.
I was very fortunate enough for a bunch of things to fall in line. And then, what the world sees now is called subalpine, but it was really based on a lot of the information and science I'd learned, working on that program in the military.
Right. So you got into the military too when you said 19, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah,
1988. Yeah.
1988. Okay. And what was that experience like? You were in the Navy as a diver, right?
Yeah. Uh, you mean, why did I join, or just kind of what was that experience
Yeah,
like?
like did you know at a younger, like at what age were you like, this is something I want to do, I want to get into the military? And then
Yeah.
also, like, when did you specifically know, like, Navy and diver? Because I know I've heard some things, some people absolutely can't stand diving for some reason, just because it's not
Yeah.
easy, I know, but
Yeah. Um, when I look back and, if when I became honest with myself, it's something I really always wanted to do from, a very early age. So I couldn't give you an exact age, six
okay.
years old, 8 years old. My family had always instilled in me, a sense of service, doing something beyond, bigger than you and beyond just yourself. My father was an officer in the Navy for a while. He had also been a marine biologist for a while, so that's kind of the Navy and the
Mm-hmm.
diving portion kind of coming together. Um, I always had, still do, a sense of adventure. I just couldn't, and again, this is, me at my age now, looking back and talking to my earlier self, but I could always go and be an accountant. I could always go be a lawyer. But I couldn't always go do the things I wanted to do. One, because there were age limitations. There were certainly a lot of physical and emotional, mental limitations. I tried to go to college. I wanted to be a college athlete. I'd done that in high school, and I just realized my heart wasn't in it. And after a little bit of soul searching,
Mm-hmm.
um, I just realized that, the military is my calling. It's not for everybody, but it was certainly for me. I would do it all over again 100 times over. Um, but it was that sense of serving the country, that pride, that patriotism,
Mm-hmm.
but also that sense of adventure. I mean, I wanted to, no offense to Cleveland, get the hell out of Cleveland. I wanted to get out of the country. I wanted to go travel the
Mm-hmm.
world. I wanted to go, not necessarily sail the seven seas, but go dive in them. And so after a little bit of research, the Navy seemed like the best idea. I
Mm-hmm.
had gotten my civilian scuba qual, I think when I was 16, and I could drive. So I was already, at a very base
Mm-hmm.
level trying to pursue some of that. Um, but once I had actually committed to it, I think I signed the papers. It's hard for me to remember exactly, but I think, I signed the papers, and 2 weeks later I was, in the Navy. And although it's a little bit of a culture shock when you start, the reality is I was probably never, happier, more satisfied
Mm-hmm.
with the decision that I'd ever made in my life to that point.
For sure. And the like you said, being growing up being patriotic, that's something I know my family, same thing was instilled. I never had the desire to go into the military. Heck of a lot of respect for it, but it just wasn't something. For me, I guess. And but looking back on it, and even growing up, I started off in public school when I was younger, and eventually went to a small private school. But I don't know what school like is like now. I just know that it seems to be, when we're so focused on our social media that and just news, it doesn't seem like people are as patriotic about the country, and especially my generation. And it's definitely something that's gnawing at me and why I wanted to start this. And I remember, I'm young enough to where I don't remember what happened on 9/11. I was told, I was born in 1998, so I was an infant. Don't remember it, but I still remember in school, when I in elementary school, on that day, this was a day that we set aside and we learned about it, had a moment of silence, and there was respect for it. And I can't speak for the schools now. I don't know if that's still going on, but it doesn't seem like it. Do you think that people have, like, what was the difference in your military service prior to 9/11 and then after? Was there a big change in how things were done?
Yeah. So first, let me say that, you don't have to serve in the military to, be patriotic or kind of exercise that ability, right? There's
Mm-hmm.
lots of ways to serve the country or your communities. I think you even, mentioned something that you had done, um, that isn't specifically military service.
Right.
It was right for me. I would never force anybody to do that. But there's a lot of ways to, serve your country and just be a part of something bigger than yourself. And so you put yourself kind of aside. It's almost a
Mm-hmm.
selfless act, in some regard. And I think that is, I think that's a good thing for humans to do, at least at times or for a period of time. Um, the military prior to 9/11 was, certainly the jobs I had, we were working, we were, certainly doing things that were dangerous, and I'd lost a few friends, and accidents happen, kind of thing, and we were just training, and it was, this, for me anyways, this, amazing life where it was just, go learn something, apply it, take those lessons learned and just do it again, and cyclically just continue to train. And then, you'd have a real world here or there, you'd go do that. And it was, not to be sexist by any means, but just certainly the communities that I were in, it was, to me, the
Mm-hmm.
best boys club ever in the world. And then 9/11 happened, and those of us who had already been in the military for 5, 10 years, half my career was over basically by that point. um, it was just like, yeah, we're like, it's time to go to work for
Mm-hmm.
real. Like, the scrimmages are over, it's time to go to work. And it was just like a switch was flipped, at least, for me and the people I worked with and where I was working at the time. But what I saw coming in is, so I'm a person with 12 years, I think, in at that point. The newer people coming in were incredibly patriotic, and I give them a lot of respect. And the reason is, when I joined, there was no war. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to bullshit you and tell you that I didn't wish there wasn't a war. I mean, we all did. That's what we were kind of
Right.
there to do. But the people that joined after 9/11, like, they knew what they were getting into, and they knew if they got into special operations, like, what was going to
Mm-hmm.
happen, where they were going to go. And they didn't exactly understand everything, but they were willing to sign a dotted line and kind of, you know put it on the line. I have a lot of respect for those people, because it was a different military post 9/11 than pre 9/11. um,
Mm-hmm.
but the focus definitely intensified, after that day. And it really never relented, till the day I retired. It was a nonstop thing. And, the whole part about, patriotism and sacrifice, and, something bigger than self, and, birthdays, and,
Mm-hmm.
anniversaries with your wife, and births of children, like, quite frankly, all that took second place, um, to doing this mission that, nobody knew at the time that it would drag on for 20 years. Um, but that's what we were there to do. That's what the country was, paying us to do.
For sure. And something I've noticed in listening to these podcasts that you've been on, and like Andy Stumpf, I know, is he's mentioned before having some type of service that is required, not necessarily military service. Is that something that you think would be beneficial as a country for young people to do, whether that it like I said, doesn't have to be military, but serve our country specifically? Like you said, there's many ways to do it.
Yeah, I do. And with that said, I would never force military service on anyone. Like, I think
Mm-hmm.
one of the reasons that the Vietnam era and the Vietnam War, there's a bunch of reasons, but one of them, you know, has a negative connotation, is because of the draft. I mean, imagine
Mm-hmm.
get out of high school, and you want to go be a electrician. You don't want to go to college to defer. And the next thing you know, you're getting stuck in the army and sent off to war. Or you're in college, and you know that, the day you graduate, that all of a sudden your number could come up. Like, I don't think that it's not for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It was certainly for me. I've got, two brothers and a sister. One brother, uh, eventually, he got in the Air Force as an officer. The other brother did not. I certainly don't look down on him at all, or my sister, for not doing that. It wasn't for them. But I do think that as human beings, and especially citizens of a country,
Mm-hmm.
that we would all be, from a singular level and at a country level, better off if we were doing something, um, to serve a cause bigger than ourselves. And that could be Peace Corps, that could be a number of things that we would probably have to, create. Um, it could be something for your church. It could be something for your
Mm-hmm.
community center. It doesn't matter, and it doesn't have to be full time. I'm not saying people should, completely put their lives on hold, but I think that, you get that perspective that the world doesn't revolve around you.
Mm-hmm.
You are just a component of that world, and you need to try to find a place to fit in so that the cog keeps turning and things keep moving. Um, and I think that little bit of humbleness that comes with that is always a good thing.
Yeah, the social media world today definitely puts on my like I grew up with this in my hands basically. Like I do remember times before, and remember when the first iPhone and iPod Touch and all that have come out, but a lot of people on these things are living for themselves and post about themselves and the good things. And I know like this whole thing, some people might think like, oh, look at Matt, he's trying to go on and just do something to better himself. And that's the same thing. This is like one way of trying to serve other people and get the message out that there's other things different. I had my buddy on for episode 3 of my podcast, and he does cycling and triathlons, and it's just like that's just one way of going out. And he does bike ride groups with like 40 plus people that'll go on, and it's just his way of being with the community, and through that they've built things up together. And it's it's just something that I feel we need to be better at, and trying to share this in the Navy, and really in the military in general. I've noticed that it is the one place where I keep hearing stories of it didn't matter who you are or what your background was. We had a focused mission that had to get done. Why do you think that, or at least maybe you don't think this, but the military is, I feel, better at getting people to come together to get a job done than the civilian world in business or schools or just life in general, where people seem to clash more. I feel like that goes out the window, and it's, hey, we doesn't matter when we're serving together.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And, it really starts at first day in, boot camp or, officer candidate school, where, they at some regard, they remove your physical identity. Everybody gets their head shaved, everybody wears the same thing,
Mm-hmm.
everybody goes through the same chow line, everybody sleeps in the same sheets, wakes up puts on the same shoes. um and they do that for a reason, and the reason is they're trying to build that team, that sense of purpose, right, that sense of mission, that camaraderie. So you bond together. At least in boot camp, you bond together to kind of survive that thing. And it's not like you're at odds with the people that are kind of managing you, but it almost is like this competition kind of thing. And that's where this bonding nature comes in.
Mm-hmm.
And they instill in you, of course, that you're here to serve the country, and that your personal physical needs always are outweighed by the needs of the mission or the country or whatever it is. And um I don't know how other people interpret that, but to me it was this humbling, right? So you could take somebody who is very big on themselves and then just reduce them down to a regular human who saw the potential in other humans. And it wasn't about class, it wasn't about race, it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
about gender, it wasn't about anything like that. It was all about getting the mission done. And so that's where it started. And then you go to a different commands and do different things, and you don't get to choose who you get to work with for the most part. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, at some level there are some real specialized programs, but for the most part you still get come one come all, and if you can make the standard, you're in. um, the military, even in the 80s, I can't speak for anything, before me. But we always felt it was this big social experiment. And, the government had this opportunity because they basically had this, this kind of captured class of people to sit there and go, hey, we're going to try this social experiment. We're going to try women on submarines. We're going to try, remember, don't ask, don't tell. So openly gay in the military. We're going to try, segregating infantry units,
Mm-hmm.
whatever it is. And as far as I know, I mean, there's always, right, there's always going to be some issue somewhere, but as a whole, um, there were no issues. And the reason there were no issues was because you were looked at as a human being that was part of the team and you needed to pull your weight so all of us could succeed. And if you could
Mm-hmm.
do that, then you were accepted. Now, if you couldn't do that, if you couldn't pull your weight, if you couldn't do your job, if you were not professional, then that was a different issue, but it wasn't based on gender, class, or race, right?
Right.
Um, so quite frankly, and I know I sound like an old guy and maybe I am, but I just laugh now when I see this and they're trying to they're actually, it seems like, trying to instigate or incite some issues within the military that quite frankly don't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and listen, I can't sit there and tell you that, if I look at you, I can't tell that you're black or a woman or, of Spanish descent, but it doesn't matter. It
No.
literally meant nothing when you're suffering together, either be it on a ship or underwater or doing a parachute jump or whatever. It didn't matter as long as that person was competent in their job. And so, I would like to say that the military, is the shining example of
Mm-hmm.
what can happen when people just focus on the work and stop thinking about themselves, stop all the pettiness that I think we're just trying to, for whatever reason, for whatever political or social end, dig up. It truly doesn't exist. Again, there's obviously the little
Mm-hmm.
one-offs, but as a general rule, and I think you've maybe heard that, and I'll just reiterate it. Like, as a general rule, that does not exist in the military. All that matters is that you can do your job, and there's that bonding experience from that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was actually a great environment to live and work in, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I know one thing that I kind of feel is a common denominator to all that is there's a standard. And as long as you can meet the standard of whether military or even job, like if you can meet the standard requirements of what this job has to, like what you have to perform, if you can meet that performance, then I want the best person for that job. Or I want you to meet that performance and hopefully exceed it. And that's what the problem is. It doesn't matter what your gender is, what race you are, or any of that stuff. And I know, like, even in budge training, that's something that I don't think they should ever get rid of. Is it doesn't matter if you're male or female, because I know there isn't a female as of last I heard, but they're the one that came close. It just didn't meet the standard, and that's what it was. It has nothing to do with who they are or why they are the way that they are. It's something that I think should be brought over more into civilian world, because it's all over the news where they just try and push a narrative just based on somebody's skin color or gender or sexual orientation and not meeting the standard. um
Well, when people's lives are at stake, which is a little bit different than business, but of course your business is at stake, or your livelihood. But when people's lives are at stake, or the future of the country is at stake, it drives the point home. And you're right. As long as those people meet the standard, it doesn't matter who they are, where they came from, what they look like. And you know people who've never experienced that may say that that's BS or sounds like a cliche,
mhm,
but it's the truth. It's honestly the truth. And when I went to boot camp, I went down to um, Orlando, Florida. I was coming from Cleveland. I knew about different ethnicities, right?
mhm,
I mean, it was just kind of segmented that way. This little town is this, and this little town is that, and but we got down there, And I'd never been to the South before, and so that was kind of a different
Mm-hmm.
culture. And then there were people that had never seen, like white guys never seen black guys never bunked with white guys, and you get over it. You get over it
Mm-hmm.
really quick when you realize that you have to come together for a common goal. And as long as everybody pulls their weight, there's no issues. And when somebody doesn't, then they're just kind of moved out, and you know, and they go do something else. And so that works. And yeah, I don't like the military being used as a pawn in some of this politics today.
Mm-hmm.
I think it quite frankly, it turns to see it because it's not warranted.
No, definitely not. And you speak very highly of your military time and service, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it seems like this is something that you're passionate about, and this is how is going from something that you seem to be very passionate about and then going into transition into civilian life. I'm sure that must have been kind of like a little nerve wracking. What am I going to do when I'm doing something that I love to do? And how is that transition? And were you looking to do or simulate that in any way coming out?
Uh, well, I love what I do now, and I am passionate about it. But to answer your question, um, it was a struggle, and for me, it wasn't a struggle until about 2.5, 3 years after I got out. Because I just poured myself into my work, right? I felt
Mm-hmm.
like, I like to say I needed to create a civilian resume. I needed to prove myself outside of the military. The day I left the military, I left the rank, I left the status, I left whatever, reputation I had behind in the military. I had to recreate that now in the civilian workforce.
Mm-hmm.
And, but about 2.5 years, 3 years into it, I realized that, um, you just kind of get confronted with, listen, the reality is whatever job you have outside the military is never going to be as important. It's never going to have as much life and death associated with it. You're never going to have as close friends or teammates that you had before. And that part of your life is over and you can never get it back. And I'm sure I'm sure maybe a professional sports star or something like that is similar, but when you have such close bonds with people in the military, and you have that, that camaraderie, and you have that language you share, and you have all those shared experiences, it can be a little depressing. I struggled with it for about a year. Um, and then I came out the other side, okay. And part of that reason was because, as friends of mine, I was probably the oldest in the group of my peers. But as friends of mine began to, retire and get out, et cetera, that we kind of found each other again. And so,
Mm-hmm.
we can still communicate and stuff, but listen, you gotta figure out that part of your life's over and you got to move on, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
learn to assimilate. And I think that people from the military, because I do some work um, with transitioning veterans,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't BS them at all, and I tell them it maybe not going to be the easiest thing they've done, but I also tell them that they've got a lot more to offer the world than they could possibly know, and the world doesn't quite fully understand what they have to offer either. And so I think as more and more people are kind of making that transition, and these foundations are kind of coming together to help that. I think it's going to be mutually beneficial to all
Mm-hmm.
parties.
Yeah. Yeah. So another thing I've seen that you've done is mountaineering. Is Can you explain what that is? I know very little on it, but it's very intriguing.
Yeah. So, uh, well, mountaineering is a general term, is, let's just say climbing a mountain, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, um, let's say climbing a mountain that takes some technical equipment.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe a rope, maybe an ice axe, maybe some crampons on your feet because there's snow on the ground. That's broad brush. That's what mountaineering is. And then there's lots and lots of different aspects of that, right? And lots of different offshoots and lots of more risk and things like that you can take.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was something I'd kind of always wanted to do when I was, again, growing up, kind of figuring out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was fortunate to be able to, do some of that in my off time while I was in the military, and then slowly I'm not really sure I could explain how. It just circumstance, but I was able to slowly incorporate that into some of my work with special operations. Um, this was pre 9/11, certainly not knowing
Mm-hmm.
that in a few short years we would be at war at the high altitudes of the Hindu Kush in Afghanistan. No idea that this skill set I was developing was going to somehow become uh, you know um, a skill set that was needed,
Mm-hmm.
and requested for the war effort. But yeah, I did a lot of that, a lot of rock climbing, a lot of mountain climbing, a lot of ice climbing. So that would be climbing like a frozen waterfall with ice
Really?
axes and crampons in your hand. Trips to Yosemite to climb El Cap, and trips to Alaska to climb some lesser peaks around Denali or Mount Rainier in Washington. And
Mm-hmm.
then I didn't want to just do that, but I was really into kind of the snow and ice thing. But then I wanted to put skis on my feet when I got up there and ski down some of this stuff, that was reasonable. So just the full spectrum. I thought for a period of time in my life that I would, maybe get out of the military and be a, professional mountain guide, which I'm glad I didn't do. But some of that,
Mm-hmm.
some of that experience definitely, lended itself to me later in my career.
For sure. And doing some digging, I had found too that social media and Instagram for you is something somewhat newer. And beforehand, you had one cat picture, right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I'm right on that one.
Yes, you are correct. You are correct. Yep.
So, how is that transition from being the guy with the one cat picture to now uploading and actually trying to share some wisdom on gear reviews and things of that nature?
Yeah. So, um, we, I'll say as a blanket statement, we were not allowed to have social media when I was in the military. It was certainly very frowned upon, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, your wife could have it, your family could have it, but you certainly should not, as a general rule, have your own social page. And certainly anybody in special operations was, it was very frowned upon. And it was nothing I was really interested in anyways. But, as I transitioned out, I got a job with Sitka. Um, I wanted to see what the market was doing. I wanted to follow certain people. I wanted to see if I could find trends and certain language that people were
Mm-hmm.
using, and trying to do research for product development. So I begrudgingly got an Instagram page and a Facebook page, and um, but I didn't have anything on there. And then friends of mine, right, gave me a hard time, and
Mm-hmm.
I said, "What's the craziest thing I could put up there that with the biggest shock value?" And that was me holding one of my cats. I like cats, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I'll own that. I'm not ashamed of that, right? But anyways, fast forward ahead 5, 6 years, almost 6 years, as a civilian doing this job, and I realized a couple things, and one was I miss teaching. So I used to teach in the military. I I was I really enjoyed it. I was very passionate about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, trying to pass on to the you know newer generation or newer troops, knowledge that I'd had, things I'd seen, things I thought that could help them save their life possibly. And I really enjoyed that, and I thought I was pretty good at it. And I realized at a certain point in time that I missed that teaching. And I certainly didn't think I was going to find that satisfaction in a high school or a college. Um, so I didn't know what to do with that. And then I saw some things in the hunting marketplace, where there was some information getting put out that I felt was not only a disservice to the consumer, but also dangerous. I thought the information being put out was not, it wasn't right. And I think it was used as more as a sales tool, than a tool for good. Right. And unfortunately, this particular brand that did that kind of used a military unit, kind of as their pawn. And that just, it made me mad. And I realized I had kind of three options. I could go home and be pissed about it and do nothing. I could just forget about it and move on with my life, or I could go ahead and engage, and try to be, a voice kind of in the world, in the community, that was trying to educate, which I think is something that's missing, like education
Yep.
from a standpoint of experience. And there's a few, but there's not a lot doing it. And so, yeah, quite frankly, I didn't know a lot about Instagram. I really didn't know how to post anything. Although I had a cat photo, I'd actually tried to post a second cat photo, and in the process, I deleted the first cat photo. Right. I mean, that was kind of the, you know, the level I was operating at. But anyways, long story short, yeah, I started doing these videos on Instagram about different outdoor skills or mindset, or things to think about before you go on a trip, or how to run a different, a cooking stove, or, how to look for a pair of boots, or how to fit a pack, or whatever it was. And I said, I'm going to do it for a year. And if at the end of the year that I enjoyed it, the consumer was still engaged and enjoying it, then I would continue to do it and try to elevate my game. And this, unbeknownst to me, but this started right at the beginning of COVID.
Okay.
And at the beginning of COVID, I said that, nobody knew how long it was going to last. I mean, quite frankly, it's still not over. But I said, I want to come out of this farther ahead than if I hadn't done anything at all. So if this lasts a year, I want to say I took advantage of that year to get ahead. And so working from home gave me a little extra time, that I could start engaging in this. And at the end of that year, I was enjoying it more than ever, although I was still struggling, but I was learning with social media. The consumer was engaged. I was gaining followership. People were, digging in and asking questions. And so I decided to take the next step, which was build out a website, start a business, and kind of try to take this to the next level, purely with the intent of educating people who want to go outdoors. So just like me, when I was a child, trying to figure this out in Ohio with no real assets, but say like Outdoor Life magazine, that I think after 30 years, I've got enough experience that I could help other people, kind of with that journey, wherever they are along that path. And so that's what I've been doing basically for the last year and a half, while, I'm still working for Sitka.
Yeah. And that's huge. I stumbled upon that. And at the beginning of COVID, I was home for I do woodworking.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yeah, so I work at a cabinet shop, and the first 2 weeks we were home, and when nobody knew what was going on. Then after that, we were deemed essential, and I worked through and was going in every day since then. So I didn't really have that break, or didn't have the advantage of coming home. But what I did was, working 40 plus hours a week, I had the podcast, and that's kind of like, whereas you and Free Range American, all these Cleared Hot with Andy, and just putting all this stuff out, I just kind of soaked it up. And similar, I kind of was just sitting there like getting mad at, okay, why aren't we doing anything about going out and educating? And like, even myself, I'm like, why am I not educating myself, and why am I not trying these things? I'm still young. I don't want to look back and say, man, I wish I would have done that. And I believe Andy Stump was the one who said, people who always want to do something do it. And that just really kind of resonated with me. And I sat on this whole idea of this podcast for about 6 months before I finally said, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger and I'm going to try it. And same thing, just I'm going to try it and grow myself. And if people come along for the ride and it's something that's working out, then we'll grow it as it gets further. But it's definitely, it's more therapy even for me to get out and kind of explain my thoughts, talk with people, and have somebody like you come on. And I've just really been enjoying it so far, and love to see where it will go. And even when you announced the your website, which it's just the landing page still, I believe, right?
Yeah, I'm
Or
trying to
the email
launch it.
list.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe as early as tomorrow. I don't know, but we're
Yeah.
close. We're really close. Yep.
Either way, I will link it in here, and because I know I'm sure it'll have a ton of great information for myself, other people out there. And yeah, so just really looking forward to that. And I know you said you have Alaska trip coming up next week, right? This upcoming week.
Yeah. So today's Thursday. I'm leaving Saturday to go back
Saturday.
to Alaska. I haven't been back in 7 years since I left. But yeah, going
Okay.
back Saturday on a caribou hunt.
Caribou
Uh,
hunt.
yeah, with a buddy of mine that I'm been friends with, and we've stayed in touch. And he's come down here a couple times in Montana and hunted over the last couple of years. And so
Mm-hmm.
we were going to do this last year, and just with the virus, it wasn't worth taking the risk on plane tickets and things like that. But
Right.
yeah, so we're going to go back and do that this year. But yeah, I commend you for not just kind of sitting down and taking a break, which I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe some people have considered this an excuse to do. But just the way I live my life, whatever I did or didn't do, or people think I did, or whatever praise they want to heap upon me from the military, or even what I've done in my civilian job in the past. The way I conduct my personal life is every day I have to prove myself to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't, I'm not going to say it doesn't matter what other people think, but what matters more is what I think of myself. and
Yep.
and so I just had to set these goals. And I realized that when I settle into a comfort zone, that I don't grow, and then I just don't enjoy my life as much. Like
Yeah.
I said, social media, YouTube, building a website, like, you want to talk out of my comfort zone? Like, I couldn't get more out of my comfort zone. Um, but I've learned a ton, and I think I'm helping people, like you with this podcast. Yeah, you can be a little selfish and say, yeah, I get something out of this too. But you're also trying to put a product out there and help people, and you're putting yourself out there in the process. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a great thing, man. I mean, not everybody has to agree with what you're doing, but you're doing it. And people
Right.
need to be commended for, taking that risk. I mean, just in the court of public opinion, that risk anymore is,
Oh yeah. It
a
was.
big deal. It's a big deal.
It's terrifying at times. Like when
Yeah,
I at first I was like, I don't know if I want to do this, but and it's something that I've encouraged on past episodes of, if you don't agree with me, I'd love to hear from you. Either leave a review, comment, and have these conversations, because I don't have to agree. Nope, nobody's gonna agree on everything 100% of the time. And if
right.
we did, it'd be very boring, and there would be no podcast to talk about. You know?
Yeah, 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 exactly. No, we all can agree to disagree. I think it's the way you go about it that
Hmm.
maybe is, you know, um, how you conduct yourself, and the way you go about that says a lot more about you than, you know, than your disagreement. But yeah, so anyways, for me personally, it's been a journey. I'm liking it. I'm feeling like I'm contributing again. I'm not selfish, because I felt like the information that and I thought it was unique enough, and it took me a long time to gain it, that the information was going to die with me if I wanted to be selfish and not
Hmm.
share it. And so I at least needed to make an effort, and had no idea. And it's crazy. I've been reached out to by, we'll call them soccer moms with kids, and Boy Scout troops, and other special operations guys, and hunters, and just the full gamut. And and so it's been fun. And I think, that's the same journey
Mhm.
you'll find yourself on as you continue to kind of, put yourself out there for public scrutiny. But overall, it's been a real positive experience for me.
Yeah, so far, same boat from the people that I've had reach out and the DMs and emails and all that. It's been good. It got more than I thought it was going to at first, which was awesome. My mom even was telling me at work, she had shared it on her Facebook, of course, and a vendor of hers was telling another employee that my mom works with, like, hey, did you listen to your son's another employee of your son's podcast? And she just told me that today, and it was kind of like, whoa, like this is a vendor of yours that heard it. Like it was pretty cool to
Yeah.
have that. But I think that's a good spot to wrap up. It's where can people find you? uh
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm at J Barklow, Barklow. So at J Barklow on Instagram. And then, we've been talking about this website. The landing page is up. I'm hoping to launch this before I head to Alaska. So tomorrow or Saturday, but it's knowledgefromstorms.com. And then there's also a YouTube page by the same name with some videos. But yeah, so we'll see where it goes. But I'm having a lot of fun with it right now.
Awesome. And I appreciate you spending time with me and talking through this. And I just, again, very grateful.
Well, thanks for having me on, Matthew.
I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of the Forging Roots podcast with John Barklow. I know he is a wealth of knowledge, and I learned quite a bit from this episode, and hopefully you guys did too. This was just scratching the surface. So, who knows? Later down the road, we will probably have him come back on and share some more. And if you were looking to get a hold of John or keep up with what he's doing, on his website, he has his Instagram and his YouTube, and I will link all of that down in the description for the podcast. And on YouTube, I'll put the down in the description as well and the links to everything. But without further ado, I will see you guys in the next episode.